Hi, Julian DeRose here from the IIF here at Minds and Money in London. We have a very special guest for you today. I'm joined here by Richard Carleton. Richard, hi, how are you?
I'm well today, thank you.
Richard, I know who you are. I know the company you're working for, but many viewers do not know that. Can you please introduce yourself and the company you're working for?
Certainly. I'm Richard Carleton. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Securities Exchange. We're an exchange that has operated in Canada for the last 20 years with a particular focus on early stage companies across a wide range of industries.
And if you say early stage, I think mining might be one of the important sectors for you guys. Tell us a little more about the mining sector at the CSE and how important is it for you guys?
Well, mining obviously was the original sector that joined the exchange back, as I say, 20 years ago. But we've seen a real boom in mining investment and new companies coming into the markets in Canada over the last couple of years. And I think everybody anticipated coming out of the pandemic that you would see the supply chain shortening trade, so that people looking to extract metals onshore in North America or maybe near South America. But of course, with the Russian sanctions and the resulting change in commodity prices, as well as, of course, the battery metals and expectation of the increased electrification of the economies, that we're going to see a demand for not just gold and precious metals, which is the historic strength of the Canadian early stage capital markets in the mining space, but a broad portfolio of metals such as nickel, copper, cobalt, zinc, lithium, graphite, and the rare earths.
And we know a lot of those metals are located in Canada, and people might think that only Canadian companies are on the CSE, but you're here with me today in London. So basically, can you tell us a bit more about how it works for the CSE, which kind of company you want, and what are you doing here today?
Well, it's true that Canadian corporate finance is an expertise in mining that's recognized globally. So we see projects on the Canadian Securities Exchange that may be located in Asia, in Africa, in Australia, in Europe, literally anywhere in the world. And so whether the company is in Canada or it's an international company, we take them all, and the Canadian capital markets are very friendly to those sorts of projects, and they do have the expertise, of course, to support those companies in their journey.
Absolutely. And then we're here in London, Minds and Money, which is usually a place where you want to raise money, where you want to raise capital. How can a CSE help those companies raising capital, facing the challenges that are upcoming?
Well, that's a great question, and it's exactly why we're here. We're wanting to make sure that the companies that are listed on the CSE, as they grow, and I think one of the interesting facets of the battery metal companies is that they're progressing from the exploration stage to a production stage much faster than maybe investors have seen over the last several generations.
Absolutely.
So as these companies look to raise not just another $6, $8, $10 million to fund an extension of the drill program, but to actually contemplate going into production, they're going to be looking to raise capital in New York, in London, in Sydney, in addition to Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And so we want to make sure that as they come here, work with institutions in the UK, they know and respect a CSE listing, they understand that we are a recognized stock exchange by the authorities in the UK. We work with our partners at Aquis Exchange and with the London Stock Exchange Group as well, again, to make sure that if those companies are going to dually list here in the UK, for example, that they're entitled to all the benefits and privileges of an existing public issuer in another G7 country to fast track and to lighten the regulatory burden.
Well, this is great to hear, obviously support from you guys, but also very surprising as a CEO of the CSE is boots on the ground here at an event, meeting with real companies. What does that brings you when you come back actually to Canada and you got new ideas coming out? What does those conversations with the actual miners can help the CSE in their next policies or ideas?
Well, again, it goes exactly to what friction points can we remove, both within our own policies and procedures, but also how we can help them internationally, right? Whether it is in the UK or, for example, in Australia, because we have a number of folks, especially in the lithium space, that are looking to raise capital in Australia. We need to make sure that the ASX and the CSE are on the same page with regulating these issuers.
And maybe lastly, we discussed about the shuffling in geopolitics and so on, but maybe a little more about what's happening right now in the US and with Europe, with new policies, with really those, not just battery metal, but strategic strategic metals, critical metals, on the supply chain side and so on. What have the CSE seen of impact of those policy on both North America and in Europe?
Well, I think it's fair to say that that is ultimately behind the boom in interest that we have seen. So last year, in 2022, I believe we had roughly 80 new mining companies join the exchange. In the first quarter of 2023, 22 new companies joined the exchange in the mining space. We believe we got, in fact, all of the new mining companies coming into the market in Canada in the first quarter. And we have about a 4 to 6 month forward look in terms of the applications that we're currently working on. And again, the pipeline continues to be strong. So it will be 20 to 25 companies in each of the next 2 quarters that come into the market on the Canadian Securities Exchange.
Well, I can understand a lot more your smile now. Obviously, a lot of company comings, business is booming, mining is a good place to be at. But maybe one comment for the viewers out there that do have or know publicly traded company that are maybe at the in Australia or London and not yet listed in Canada, not yet listed on CSE. How can they do that, and who they should approach?
Well, again, I think it's extremely important because of there is friction, unfortunately, between the clearing and settlement organizations in Australia and the UK and Canada. Canada and the US actually are fully, my favorite word, fungible. So there is no friction on trading between Canada and the United States. But what that means for an issuer is it's absolutely critical that if they're going to list in the UK or list in Australia, there needs to be stock onshore in those countries and a sufficient distribution to provide for daily price discovery. So build the liquidity in each one of the different markets that they happen to be listed. It's absolutely necessary, because if you simply list in that other jurisdiction without getting stock onshore, it probably will be a very disappointing experience from a liquidity perspective.
Absolutely. Great. So then you heard from Richard here, we are mining boom at the beginning maybe of a mining boom, maybe even of a super cycle. There's a lot of analysts claiming a lot of things out there. One thing is sure is that you are seeing it firsthand, new companies, 80 new ones and 22 new ones, so that boom is continuing and so on. What can we wish the CSE for the next year?
I'd like to see some more participation on the retail side, so that, again, it's true in Canada, the United States, and the UK, trading volumes are actually down quite considerably from the record that we saw in 2021. And I think it really began with the increase in interest rates that the retail investors in each of the 3 main, on the triangle here, they really did begin to sit on their hands, if you will. And so what we're hoping to see is that with interest rates perhaps stabilizing and maybe starting to go down again, that will encourage retail participation. And what that will mean is we haven't seen a lot of reward yet for the companies that are reporting positive results. Yeah. So that the asset valuations continue to, I think it's fair to say, frustrate company management a little bit at this point. So that if there's more retail participation, responding positively to the good news that's coming into the markets for many of these companies, we'll see then an easier opportunity for them to raise secondary capital at better valuations, less dilutive, of course, to the original shareholders.
Exactly, and then obviously creating more value for current shareholders, for retail. It's a big circle. At one point, it feeds on itself, for sure. So, Richard, it was very interesting. Thank you very much for giving us a very high-level view on the stock markets, on what's happening in Canada, the boom in the mining industry. Here at Mines and Money in London, it was very great to see you here. As I said, boots on the ground, Canadian coming and here, joining markets together, making sure that we're working collaboratively rather than competitively. So, Richard, thank you very, very much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you.